The world changed yesterday. While most of us were distracted by the usual cycle of news, a geopolitical earthquake hit Caracas that will redefine American wealth for the next century. This isn't just a headline about a military operation. It's a story about the most valuable liquid on Earth and a strategic maneuver that has been decades in the making. To understand why the invasion and the capture of President Maduro by US forces isn't just a military event, but a massive financial reset, we have to look past the smoke. We have to look at the numbers that explain why Venezuela is the ultimate prize in the global game of chess. If you want to understand where the money is going in 2026, you have to understand the Orinoco Belt. Let's start with the sheer, staggering scale of what lies beneath the Venezuelan soil. We often hear about Saudi Arabia or the Permian Basin in Texas as the titans of energy. But the reality is that Venezuela sits on the largest proven oil reserves on the planet. We are talking about over 300 billion barrels. To put that into perspective, that is more than the United States, Russia, and China combined. But it's not just about the volume. In the world of high finance and global logistics, geography is destiny. Venezuela is a mere 6-day tanker trip from the massive refinery complexes of the US Gulf Coast. For a superpower like the United States, which is currently grappling with a national debt that defies logic, having a massive nearby supply of heavy crude isn't a luxury. It's a survival requirement. You see, the refineries in Texas and Louisiana weren't just built for any oil. They were specifically engineered over decades to process the thick, sulfurous, heavy crude that comes out of Venezuela. When that supply is cut off, those refineries, the heart of the American energy machine, become inefficient and expensive to run. By securing Caracas, the US is essentially plugging its own industrial heart back into its primary power source. But to truly understand why this happened yesterday, we have to look at the echoes of history. If you've been following this channel, you know that empires rarely act out of pure ideology. They act out of necessity. Think back to the early 20th century and the era of the Banana Wars. At the time, the US Marine Corps wasn't just patrolling the Caribbean for fun. They were protecting the commercial interests of giant corporations like the United Fruit Company. They were ensuring that American capital had stable access to resources. Major General Smedley Butler famously said he was a racketeer for capitalism, helping to make Mexico, and especially Cuba, a decent place for the American banking interests. Or consider the year 1953 in Iran. This is perhaps the closest rhyme to what we are seeing today. When Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh moved to nationalize Iran's oil, the British and the Americans didn't just sit back and watch their profits evaporate. They orchestrated Operation Ajax, a covert coup to restore a leader who would keep the oil flowing to the West on Western terms. The capture of Maduro yesterday is the 2026 version of that same playbook. It is the realization that in an era of high debt and high inflation, control over the master resource is the only way to maintain a superpower status. It's about the petrodollar. Since the 1970s, the world has operated on a hidden agreement. Oil is traded in US dollars. This creates a global demand for the dollar that allows the US to print money and run up debts that would bankrupt any other nation. If Venezuela, with the world's largest reserves, successfully moves its trade to the Chinese yuan or a BRICS currency, the petrodollar dies. And if the petrodollar dies, the American standard of living goes with it. The invasion wasn't just about stopping a dictator. It was about protecting the very mechanism that allows the US to function as a global financial hub. For the last several years, the US has used maximum pressure, a combination of crushing sanctions and diplomatic isolation. But sanctions are a slow-acting poison, and they often drive the target into the arms of rivals. In this case, Venezuela began trading its oil for Russian weapons and Chinese infrastructure. To the strategists in Washington, the prospect of a Russian military base or a Chinese-controlled oil hub just 1,300 miles from Florida was a red line that could no longer be ignored. The recent elections in Venezuela were the final catalyst. For years, the legitimacy of the government was a point of contention, but yesterday's direct action signals that the era of strategic patience is over. The US government has now openly stated it will run Venezuela in the interim to fix the oil infrastructure. This terminology is crucial. Fixing infrastructure is code for privatizing assets. It means the massive state-owned oil company, PDVSA, will likely be carved up and sold to Western giants like Chevron and ExxonMobil. This is a move that echoes the Reconstruction era after the American Civil War or the occupation of Japan after 1945. It is a total takeover of a nation's productive capacity to align it with the interests of the occupier. By installing a transitional government and directly overseeing the oil fields, the US is attempting to onshore a foreign economy to stabilize its own. It's an attempt to find a treasury chest abroad to pay for the mounting bills at home. As we watch the transition in Caracas unfold over the coming weeks, we have to look at this through the lens of history. Is this an act of liberation, as the official briefings suggest? Or is it the ultimate hostile takeover? Throughout history, when a superpower faces a debt crisis at home, it almost always looks for a wealth trap abroad. In the 1500s, it was Spain looking at the silver of Potosi. In the 1800s, it was Britain looking at the textile wealth of India. In 2026, it is the United States looking at the oil of Venezuela. The names of the leaders change, and the technology of the invasion becomes more sophisticated, but the pursuit of wealth and the strategic necessity of resources remain the constant, unmoving heartbeat of our story. The capture of a president is a dramatic ending to one chapter of Venezuelan history, but for the global economy, it is the beginning of a much larger, more dangerous story about who will control the energy of the next century. If the US successfully integrates these reserves, it could provide the breathing room needed to manage the national debt we discussed in our last episode. But history warns us that such interventions often come with a hidden price, a debt of a different kind that eventually comes due. Keep your eyes on the Orinoco Basin. Like and subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching Echoes from History.